Welcome back to another Bellator fight prediction video. In this video, I'll be predicting some of the main card fights for Bellator 214, Fedor versus Bader. And I'm just going to stick to the co-main and main event fights. There is one other good fight on the main card, at least as it is right now, but it's the Juan Archuleta versus Ricky Bandejas fight. Bandejas coming fresh off that win over Gallagher. But that was only that was like the only fight I've seen from Ricky Bandejas, so I can't really give too much detail on him as far as predicting wise. And Juan Archuleta, I'm pretty sure I've seen him fight, but I can't recall it too much. So it's really no point in me really even trying to call that fight too much. I would probably lean to Ricky Bandejas just off that win over Gallagher, but it's still just based off that win. I can't really judge too much. In this, not the easiest to find Bellator fights anyway to dig up research, so I'm not going to really try to dig into that fight too much or these fighters too much. So I'm just going to kind of just avoid at least for this card. And then there's the Jake Hager or Jack Swagger versus J.W. Kisser or whatever his name is. And it's 0-0 WWE wrestler coming in against a guy who's 0-1 MMA fighter. More so probably just to give him a win or give him a chance at his best chance at getting a win in his debut. So I really can't judge too much off that fight either, but obviously you will lean to Jake Hager because it seems like they're trying to give him that boost, so he's supposed to win this fight pretty much. So I will lean to Bandejas and Hager, but I wouldn't say I'm not even going to really go into those fights. I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying that's who I would lean to, but I'm not predicting those fights. So let's just get now on to the prediction. So in our co-main event, we have in the featherweight division, Aaron Pico versus Henry Corrales. So this is looking like a title eliminator fight, at least if either man who wins this fight wants it. Henry Corrales is riding one of the better streaks in the featherweight division. He's been in there with former champions, been in there with the current champion. Though he lost both of those fights, he still put up a good outing in those fights. He also been in there with the most recent title challenger for the weight class, or for the featherweight division in Bellator. So he's definitely been in there with the best the division has to offer. Now he's currently riding a pretty good streak. So this is definitely looking like a title eliminator fight, and there's really not nobody else in the division that's really that close to a title fight right now anyway. So if he wins this fight, he's very much the guy who would stand out as the number one contender in Bellator's featherweight division. You know, Aaron Pico's side, if he wins, he's looking like the number one contender. If he chooses to take that fight, maybe he might say I'm 4-1, or after the fight he say I'll be 5-1 if he wins the fight, and maybe say maybe I want to be like 10-1 before I challenge for the title. Maybe he wants to fight a little bit more before he challenges for the title. Maybe he wants to round out his skills, get his feet wet a little bit more. But either way, I say this is a title eliminator fight if either man who wins this fight wants a title fight after this fight. But now that the background's on the way, look at these fighters, how they match up. I think it's still a pretty good style matchup on both ends. Henry Corrales is a pretty big featherweight. I think this will be Aaron Pico's toughest test to date. Even though Higo was his toughest test to date in his prior fight, his last fight, this fight, his next fight, or this fight he's coming to now, will be his toughest test now. Because Henry Corrales is an actual filled out featherweight. He's pretty big for the weight class, 5'9", 5'8", which is a good size for featherweight. And on top of that, he has a good physicality to him. Might not be built like Hector Lombard or nothing like that, but he is strong. It might not be all a bodybuilder strong, but he is like that physical strong. Like he's filled out, he eats good, he cuts good weight. And he's actually got that natural strength along with the technique and stuff built into him. Might not be the biggest puncher, but he definitely hits hard. Like he has heavy hands. Like I said, that physicality. He may not be the best wrestler or best grappler, but when you're in those exchanges, you're going to feel that strength. You're going to feel that size. And when he's exchanging punches, you're going to feel the weight of his punches. He's heavy or everything does. Might not be a Rumble Johnson with his knockouts, but he definitely has those punches that you're going to feel. It's going to be heavy when he hits you. He has pretty solid boxing. He's a veteran. He's been in there with some of the best. And he put on good performances in all those fights, win or lose. And he's just a game opponent. Now going against Aaron Pico has potential through the ceiling, through the roof. It's just breaking through the heavens. He has potential, crazy potential. But one thing that's you kind of question about him is his chin. And maybe he gets a little bit too aggressive. Maybe like when he has to kind of dial that aggression back a little bit. Is the competition, and it's like, the level of competition keeps rising, that he has to kind of dial that back. Because people are definitely going to be looking to counter him, his aggression. Definitely people trying to keep him behind a jab. And, people just with different strategies to fight him, especially as he fights more fights. And people are just trying to, just eat his hype. They're trying to build off his hype by beating him. So he's definitely going to have to adapt and change. I think this is going to be one of those fights where he's going to have to adapt and change. Because I think Henry Corrales' boxing is better. I mean, not better than his, but his boxing is one of the better boxers he's had faced, one of the higher level competitors he'll face, an actual true featherweight and a big featherweight at that, with power, like I said, with the boxing, with the durability and the toughness. So Pico won't really be able to just run through him, I don't think. And if he does, bravo to him. I mean, not bravo, but congrats to him if he does run through him. But I think this is a fight where he's going to have to test himself and not get too overzealous, I would say. Kind of fight from the outside a bit, feel Henry Corrales out, then maybe mixing some wrestling. I think Henry Corrales is definitely grappling, no slouch on his grappling, but he's not a real submission threat. So Pico can definitely look to use his wrestling to mix up stuff and give Corrales some different looks without risking getting submitted by no guillotine or triangle choke or nothing like that. So I think Pico is going to mix up in this fight. He's dealing with a very big, I mean, a pretty big featherweight, a big strong featherweight, and that doesn't really have that big of a submission threat. So I think he'll mix it up, give him different looks, and that will set up his strikes later on. So I think this fight, is going to be a good competitive fight, but Pico's going to fill him out, mixing the wrestling more in this fight than he did in his other fights where he just kind of just looked to strike. So I think Pico is going to mix it up with him on the feet, then mixing the takedowns, probably fill him out in the first round, get some takedowns, get some control, and find some success in the first round that will lead to the finish in the second round. It's going to be a good competitive fight, but Pico's going to figure him out, break him down in the first so he can get that finish in the second instead of just trying to just find the finish or just trying to just jump to the finish like he did in his previous 4 victories. He's going to have to find the victory. He's not going to jump to it and just run through his opponents. He's going to have to kind of break his opponent down and find some openings to get that finish instead of just rushing to the finish like he did in his other fights. But a good competitive fight nonetheless up to that point. But once he starts figuring him out and get different reads for what Corrales is doing or make Corrales worry about his wrestling and his striking and get him confused or not knowing what's coming next, then he'll find the finish in this fight, find those openings, catch Corrales, and stop him in the second round. Impressive performance and probably go on to challenge for that title, if not after this fight, but soon after this fight. So in this fight, I got Aaron Pico via second round TKO. Now to our main event, we have in the heavyweight division, the finale of Bellator's heavyweight Grand Prix, Fedor Emelianenko versus Ryan Bader. So looking at this fight, you got Ryan Bader, who is definitely, if not in his prime, he's very much closer to his prime, like way closer to his prime than Fedor Emelianenko is. Fedor is about 10 years past his prime, and Ryan Bader is, if he's past his prime, he's only about a year or 2 past it, if not in his prime. He's definitely achieving his most success right now than he ever did in his career, so he's definitely at the peak of his career, more so past his peak than with Fedor. His peak has long since passed that peak. But now that background's out of the way, look at the style matchup in this fight. Fedor, people have been sleeping on him a lot. I guess for some reason people saying his wrestling suck, or for some reason he's not a wrestler, even though in his prime he was Sambo world champion and was he would shut down wrestlers all the time, top-notch wrestlers all the time, and submit them or knock them out. So, like he was, matter of fact, sometimes even out grappled, out wrestled them. It's not like he's some K1 striker. He was a Sambo fighter, which includes grappling and striking. So he never been a slouch in the grappling. And I don't think he's a slouch in the grappling now either. But I think what's going to cause, kind of be the determining factors in this fight is that Fedor kind of, like a lot of pride fighters, kind of left their grappling in the past in a way. Or they don't do it as much as they did it in their prime. Like you saw in the Chael Sonnen fight, Fedor had moments where he would just fling, like Chael Sonnen would shoot him on a takedown, go at his hips, and Fedor would just fling him around like a sack of potatoes. But he would never go for the mount or anything, or even try to initiate a grappling chain. He could probably end up on the top. It's not like Chael Sonnen has real good sweeps or submissions off his back. So it's not like Fedor could just either mount him, get a half guard, and just pound out Chael Sonnen from the top. And that would make it a much easier fight. I'd say a Fabio Maldonado who doesn't have the best grappling. He could have just made the Fabio Maldonado fight such an easy fight, but he never turned into a close war that could have went either way with him getting knocked down. Or say the Matt Mitrione fight where Matt Mitrione grappling is so poor that Fedor probably could have just took him down and just grind him out to decision, but he tended to to strike with him. So pretty much 3 fights that could have been maybe he could have won the Mitrione fight pretty easily if he turned into a grappling match. He could have won the Fabio fight if it was he could have won the Fabio fight easily if he would have just turned into a grappling match. And the Chael Sonnen fight, he could have probably finished in the first 2 minutes without much struggle if he would have just implemented some of his vintage ground and pound. It's not like Chael Sonnen is that much of a gritty fighter. If he gets put in a bad position and gets hit too many times, he turtles up. So I don't know why he just didn't make it an easier fight. Maybe maybe he doesn't train grappling as much. Maybe he got some bad knees. And even in that Chael Sonnen fight, like he defended the takedowns, like the double legs pretty well, but like the single legs and the low singles, and they weren't even the best low singles, and he gave up some questionable takedowns. And his cardio with very few grappling, he looked very fatigued. I think that's really going to be the determining point. I think Fedor is definitely still a bad dude. And you see a lot of people that's past their prime that just look like straight. I'm going to just be straight up. They look like straight trash. They be past their prime. They get knocked up by a gust of wind. Fedor's still very game. And I think he could definitely give some people tough tests, even in the UFC and like the light heavyweight division, middleweight, stuff like that. He could still give some of the best people some challenge. But his best days are behind him. And he's fighting with handicaps almost. Like his grappling, maybe he doesn't have the cardio to do it no more. Maybe he has some injuries that cause him to kind of stray away from grappling as much. Who knows? Maybe he just at this point where he doesn't even look at tape of his fighters. Of his opponents. He just goes out there and fight. But I don't know. But Fedor is still a very dangerous dude, and this is still a very dangerous fight for Bader, and this is a very fight that could go either way, because Fedor could still, I think, say like double AC, I think he defend those well, but for some reason on like low singles, he don't defend them too well. I guess maybe he got bad knees now or something. And as far as overall grappling cardio, like it's not there. But on the feet, at least for the first round, I think, as a matter of fact, at any point in this fight that's on the feet, Fedor could knock Ryan Bader out. Any second on the feet, he can. He's still very dangerous, very, very crafty on the feet. Still got very fast hands, even at this late age. He swings like a pretty fast middleweight, and he's a heavyweight. So a very dangerous dude on the feet, crafty, so much experience. You can see why he was at one time the pound for pound greatest fighter of all time, and still probably the greatest heavyweight fighter of all time. You can see why he is who he is, and why he did what he did, and why he accomplished what he did, and why he was revered he is, and still is revered. But in this fight, I think it's going to come down to the cardio and the grappling. I think Ryan Bader is just young in his prime and big, and he can grapple for 5 rounds and really not even breathe heavy after doing it, because he just got that cardio. He's a big dude. He's a credentialed wrestler, top-notch wrestler, and he can do that all day. Whereas I think Fedor, he might be able to defend the initial takedowns and make it interesting, and keep it on the feet might enough to, like I said, defend the initial takedowns and keep it on the feet enough to make it interesting. But I think Bader's relentless wrestling approach is just going to eventually break him down. I think Fedor just doesn't have the cardio for that like he did in his prime, or even a couple years ago, or like 5 or 6 years ago. I think he doesn't have that cardio. He was pretty much breathing out of his mouth in the first round against Chael Sonnen with barely any grappling going on. Even before it really got to a lot of grappling. Like just defending a couple of Chael Sonnen's takedowns and swinging a couple punches, he was already breathing heavy. And almost pretty much lost that fight if Chael Sonnen didn't make a mistake. And that should have been a pretty easy fight for him to win. Now you're going against Bader, who he's supposed to lose against. Imagine like getting involved in all that wrestling. A much bigger dude. You're not getting a middleweight. You're getting a heavyweight, a light heavyweight who's basically semi like a cruiserweight almost. And Ryan Bader, big, going to be bigger than Fedor. Going to put that wrestling pressure on Fedor. He's going to be able to do that for rounds after rounds. I think it's going to be stopped in the second round. Ryan Bader's going to wear him down the first, have him breathing heavy. Fedor's still going to be game. He's going to be a warrior until he goes out on the shield. But in the second round, I think Bader's going to get an advantageous position on the ground and just start landing ground and pound that Fedor's not going to be able to defend too well. And the ref is going to have to stop the fight. Fedor's going to want to continue, but the ref's going to see enough that Fedor's not defending himself too well, and the fight's going to be stopped. So in this fight, I got Ryan Bader via second round TKO. And that concludes my fight predictions for Bellator 214, Fedor versus Bader. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and come back for more videos. Peace.